Welcome back to Objectively Biased. With me, your host, the Objective One, Steve Fogman. And today, fantasy football facts. This time it's on the running backs. Now, I do this based on a PPR, so if you want standard information, do me a favor, inbox me, and I could provide you with all the information that I have for standard leagues. But again, this is solely based on PPR. So without further ado, let's go over my top 10 running backs for the 2016 season. Number 10, LeSean McCoy. Yes, this might be a surprise, but after 895 yards rushing, 5 total touchdowns, 292 yards receiving, LeSean McCoy showed some consistency. Now again, he is injury prone, which is a concern, but between week 6 and 14, last year he scored 15 plus fantasy points per game 5 times. His lowest output was 11 points. This is a run-heavy offense that now, without Carlos Williams, leaves Shady as the number 1 option. McCoy, number 10 on my list. Number 9, Doug Martin. Now, Doug Martin had a great turnaround season, over 1,400 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers posted a top 5 running team last season. Doug also had 10 double-digit scoring games. Now, after a spectacular rookie season, he had 2 poor outings predominantly due to injury. Last year was a great turnaround and he showed great improvement. While durability is still an issue with him, he can still be a solid number 1 in your fantasy league. Number 8, Ezekiel Elliott. Now, I'm not a fan of putting rookie running backs in the top 10, but this guy's got Todd Gurley-like expectations to go along with his receiving ability. Behind a top 5 offensive line in Dallas, even without Tony Romo, it may not be that big of an issue. And if Dak Prescott plays with the starting group the way he's played in the preseason with the second group, Dallas and Zeke Elliott should have no problem winning games, and he should have no problem being a top 10 fantasy running back this season. Number 7, Mark Ingram. Yes, the guy that had 769 rushing yards to go along with 6 touchdowns, 50 receptions, and 400 yards receiving. No problem. He should be a top 10 running back. He's in his prime, and the only thing stopping him is injuries. That is the biggest issue. If he stays healthy, there's no reason why he can't be a number 1 running back and possibly a top 5 this season in fantasy. Number 6, Todd Gurley. Yes, most people have him in the top 5. Hell, some people have him number 1. But 1,100 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. After a 4-game tear last season where he ran for over 120 yards per game, he only rushed for 100 yards 1 more time in 8 games. Add that to the fact that this is an offensive line that isn't that great. This is a team that doesn't have a quarterback, doesn't have solid wide receivers. He is going to have to shoulder the load this year, and that is a pretty heavy load. I expect him to score good, but I don't expect him to be in that top 5. Can he? Yes, but the team is going to struggle, and because of the team struggle, I put him at number 6. Number 5, Jamaal Charles. Yes, Jamaal Charles is my number 5 back. And even though he only played 5 games last season, he was still the second best running back on the Chiefs. Let's not forget that over the last 2 seasons prior to the injury, he rushed for over 2,300 yards, had 120 receptions, over 980 receiving yards, and 33 touchdowns. And if the injury is a concern, well, guess what? The last time he had an injury like this, he came back the next year fully healthy and ran for over 1,500 yards. There's no reason to believe that Jamaal Charles is going to fall off. He's still in the prime of his career, and he has one more solid season, in my opinion, fantasy-wise, to put him and keep him in the top 5 this year. Number 4, Le'Veon Bell. Yes, Le'Veon Bell is serving a 3-game suspension, but again, points per game are key. And while injuries killed Bell last season, just look at what D'Angelo Williams did in his absence. In 10 games that D'Angelo started, he had 5 games where he put up 20-plus fantasy points. Now imagine if Bell was there. Let's also not forget that in the 2014 campaign for Le'Veon Bell, a season in which he was suspended as well, 1,300 yards rushing, 854 yards receiving, and 11 touchdowns. Listen, this guy's the truth. He's just getting started, and in my opinion, he's probably the best multi-purpose back we've seen since LaDainian Tomlinson. No reason for this guy not to finish in the top 5 this season. Number 3, Adrian Peterson. Yes, Teddy Bridgewater got hurt. Damn you, Teddy. But AP last season, over 1,400 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. He had 7 games where he went for 15 or more fantasy points and 4 where he went for 20 or more. But he's 31. And without Teddy, this could be a problem. I have him number 3 because in my opinion, I'm not dropping him out of the top 5 until I see him slowing down. But last season, I did see some slowing down. At the end of the season, last 7 games, he only broke 100 yards twice. That's a little bit concerning. And again, without the leader of your team, Teddy Bridgewater, this is going to be a load shouldered by him. And I'm not 100% sure if those 31-year-old legs are ready to shoulder the load the same way he did when he was 25 and 26. Number 2, Lamar Miller. Again, this is PPR. Last season, Lamar Miller had 10 touchdowns, over 1,200 per all-purpose yards, and he was completely misused. He had 6 games where he went over 15 fantasy points per game. Now he finds himself in Houston with a more stable offense. He is the number 1 running back, and if he is used in the same way a healthy Arian Foster was used, look out. He may not just finish in the top 5. He may be the number 1 running back this fantasy season. And for my number 1 running back, David Johnson. Yes, the second-year guy, David Johnson, who only had 161 touches last season. But guess what? He had 581 rushing yards to go along with 457 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. He only started 5 games. You talk about a guy who maximized every opportunity he was given until he was given the starting job. He did just that. And now he is the number 1 guy in Arizona. There is no reason to believe that this guy is not going to be a stud in this league. And from a fantasy aspect, given his receiving prowess along with his rushing ability and his knack to find the end zone, I don't believe anybody is going to take the title away from him this year. David Johnson, number 1 fantasy running back. And there you have it. My fantasy football facts on running backs. My top 10 this year. Again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Steven Fogmeg. Follow me on Instagram at S_Fogmeg and on Twitter at SFogmeg. Thank you and enjoy.